What kind of man risks his own life for a stranger who might already be dead? The storm over Dust Creek, Texas roared like a living beast. Rain slammed against the earth, as if the sky itself had split open. The land was cracked from months of heat, too dry to drink the sudden flood. The quiet creek that usually ran slow and peaceful had become a wild brown river, angry and hungry, smashing through its own banks. Cole Matthews rode along the ridge, checking the fence line. The wind tore at his coat, and the rain stung his face. At 40, he was a hard man, shaped by the Texas sun. His gray eyes held a deep stillness, and his hands were rough from years of work. Folks in Dust Creek said he was fair but cold, a man who had buried his heart beside his wife Mary 7 years ago. Cole did not care what people said. He did not look for trouble, and he did not look for company. He only looked after his land. But on this stormy day, the land showed him something he could not ignore. Something pale floated in the raging water below. At first, he thought it was a log. But then, the shape turned. It moved with a weak, strange softness that made the breath freeze in his chest. It was an arm, a human arm. Cole did not think. He kicked his horse, Apollo, down the muddy slope. The horse fought for balance as the ground slid under its hooves. The river growled like a monster waiting to swallow anything that came near. Another flash of white. A shoulder. Dark hair tangled in the water, a woman's body, rolling and twisting like a doll caught in a current too strong to fight. Cole swung out of the saddle. The cold water hit him like a fist. It pulled at his legs and nearly knocked him off his feet. Broken branches and fence posts crashed against him as he forced his way in. He saw her again, this time closer. She was naked, the river having torn every piece of clothing from her. Her long, dark hair flowed around her like ink. Her skin was pale as winter, her limbs limp. He pushed forward with all the strength in his body. The river tried to steal her away, dragging her deeper into its surge. Cole grabbed her arm. Her skin was cold and slick, and for a moment he almost lost his grip. He dug his boots into the muddy riverbed and pulled harder, his muscles burning with every inch gained. The river did not give up easily. It yanked her back like it wanted her more than he did. But Cole Matthews had never been a man who quit. With a final heave, he dragged her into the shallows and onto the muddy bank. She lay face down, still as death. Her skin was a bluish white. Her lips were gray. For a long moment, he feared he had pulled out a corpse. Cole knelt beside her, rain pouring over them, and pressed 2 fingers to her neck. There, faint but real, a tiny flutter of life. The kind of heartbeat that refused to give up. He let out a rough breath of relief, a sound he had not made in years. A dead body would have been sad. A living one, that was a problem. His problem now. He shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her bare body, shielding her from the cold rain and from his own eyes. Then he slid his arms beneath her, lifting her gently. Her wet hair clung to his calloused hands, soft and cold against his rough skin. He had not held another human this close since the day he laid Mary in the ground. He tied her over Apollo's saddle and walked beside the horse through the storm, leading them toward his cabin 2 miles away. His home stood strong among the tall oaks. A simple cabin built by his own hands. Smoke curled from the chimney, the one warm place in miles. Inside, Cole laid her on the fur rug near the fire. He worked quickly, stoking the flames until they roared. He heated water, fetched blankets, and did everything he knew to do. But nothing prepared him for the sight of her. She was young, her face delicate, her hands soft. She did not look like someone who belonged to this rough land. And she was a stranger. Stranger meant danger. He forced the thoughts away and worked with calm, steady focus. He dried her skin with a clean towel, careful and respectful, his touch more like a doctor than a man. He wrapped her tightly in warm blankets until only her face showed. She breathed, slow and weak. He pulled a chair close and sat beside her. He would not sleep tonight. He would not risk her slipping away. Hours passed. The storm beat against the cabin. The fire cracked and spat, and the stranger, this woman who had nearly died in the river, lay still, breathing in fragile little gasps. He watched her with a strange feeling growing in his chest, something he had not felt in 7 long years. A spark. Something shifting inside him, slow and quiet, like the earth waking after winter. He did not know her name. He did not know her story. But as the fire warmed the room and the storm screamed outside, Cole Matthews knew one thing deep in his bones. Saving her had changed something. And whatever happened next, his life would not be the same. What happens when a woman opens her eyes in a stranger's cabin and realizes he saved her life and could still be the only thing standing between her and danger? The first thing Evelyn felt was warmth. Not gentle warmth, but strong heat that wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. The second thing she felt was pain, a deep, bruising ache that pulsed through every bone in her body. She tried to move, but the world tilted. She opened her eyes. The ceiling above her was made of thick, rough-cut logs. Firelight flickered across them. She was lying on a fur rug in front of a big stone fireplace. A heavy blanket was wrapped around her, soft and warm. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she remembered the river, the cold, the darkness, the feeling of sinking. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She looked around the cabin. It was small and neat. A single bed in the corner, a sturdy table, a rifle by the door. No lace, no woman's touch. This was a man's home. And she was inside it. A floorboard creaked. Evelyn turned fast, clutching the blanket to her chest. A man sat in a chair in the shadows. The firelight carved his face into hard lines. It was the same face she had seen last, just before the water took her. Stern, silent, watchful. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just watched her with gray eyes that showed nothing. Where am I?" Evelyn whispered. "My cabin," he answered, his voice deep and rough like gravel. "You were in the creek. I pulled you out." Her stomach twisted. She looked down at the blanket wrapped around her. She remembered the river ripping the clothes from her body. Shame burned hot under her skin. "You," she swallowed. "Did you?" "You're covered," he said quietly. "Your clothes are drying. Those," he nodded to a chair near the fire, "belong to my wife." Wife. The word hit her like a sudden drop in the ground. Past tense. She sensed a wound in that word. Old, but still alive. Evelyn stood shakily and reached for the clothing. A simple blouse, a wool skirt, clean but worn from years of use. She turned her back to him and dressed as quickly as her trembling hands allowed. He didn't move. He didn't look. He gave her that small mercy. When she turned back, he was pouring 2 cups of coffee. He held one out. "Drink, you're cold." She hesitated. No man ever did anything for her without wanting something back. Her whole life had taught her that. But his eyes held no hunger, no expectation. She took the cup. Her fingers brushed his knuckles for the briefest moment. His skin was warm and rough. She pulled back fast, unsure of the feeling that shot through her. I have no way to pay you," she whispered. He took a sip of his own coffee, his expression unreadable. "I'm not asking for payment." The words stunned her. In her world, kindness always came with a price. Always. He put his cup down. "I'm heading out." "Storm knocked the fence down," he said. "There's stew on the stove. Biscuits in the tin. I'll be back before dark." And just like that, he pulled on his coat and stepped outside into the cold, leaving her alone with a crackling fire and a heart full of questions. Days passed in a quiet rhythm she didn't understand. His name was Cole Matthews. He did not talk much. He did not pry. He simply existed, solid, steady, silent. Evelyn, who told him her name was Anna, felt the lie in her throat every time she said it. But she couldn't tell him more. Not yet. Not when danger still followed her shadow. She swept his floor, washed the dishes, folded blankets. He never thanked her, but he never stopped her either. He accepted her presence the way a man accepts the sunrise, without question. One morning she found him struggling with the fire. Smoke filled half the room. He held a newspaper and a pile of kindling like weapons he didn't understand. "You're smothering it," she said before she could stop herself. His head snapped toward her. "I've been lighting my own fire for 7 years," he said gruffly. And smoking your house the whole time. She pushed past him and knelt by the hearth, her hands moving with old, practiced memory. Within minutes, a clean, bright flame was dancing in the fireplace. She looked up at him, a tiny, proud smile tugging at her lips. He stared at the fire for a long moment. Then, Mary used to do it like that. His dead wife's name filled the room like a soft echo. It was the first time he'd spoken it. A crack formed in his silence. Small, but real. A week later, she went out to help him mend the fence. He tried to argue. She stood her ground. He gave in. They worked side by side, their hands brushing now and then. Each touch sent something warm through her chest, something she had never allowed herself to feel before. When he looked out over the land, proud and quiet, she saw a man who had built his life, piece by piece, alone. And when he looked at her, even for a second, she felt something shift inside him too. By evening, a crackling silence settled in the cabin. Not angry, not cold, just heavy, as if neither knew how to step into whatever waited beyond it. She was beginning to feel safe with him, too safe, and that terrified her. Because she knew safety never lasted, not for women like her. The next morning, Cole saddled Apollo. "I'm going to Dust Creek for supplies." Evelyn felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "I should go with you." "No," he said gently. "You stay." She watched him ride away. The cabin felt colder without him. Dust Creek, however, was not quiet. Cole walked into town with his usual silent purpose. But the moment he bought a bolt of blue calico cloth, the whispers started. "Who's he buying women's cloth for? He ain't had a woman since Mary died." Quote, "Must be hiding someone out there." Crow's man was asking about a runaway, dark hair, young. Rumors were quicksand in a small town, and this one spread like wildfire. When Cole returned home, his jaw was tight, his eyes darker than usual. Evelyn felt it instantly. "What happened?" she asked softly. He didn't answer right away. He just stared at her. Hard. Searching. "People are talking," he said at last. "About you. About me. About a runaway woman." Her blood ran cold. He knew. Even if only in pieces, he knew. "I should leave," she whispered. "I won't bring trouble on you. You saved me. I owe you peace." She started gathering her things, the few pieces she had. Cole grabbed her arm, his grip firm but not cruel. Fire burned in his eyes, a fire she had never seen there. "You think running will stop them?" he said. "You think hiding will save you?" His voice shook with anger, but anger for her, not at her. "You stand your ground in this land," he said, "or the world will blow you away." Evelyn stared at him. Her whole life, running had been her only weapon, her only safety. Now this quiet, lonely cowboy was asking her to do the hardest thing she had ever done. Stop running. Trust someone. Trust him. Her heart trembled. Her voice trembled. Everything in her trembled. "What do we do?" she whispered. "We stand our ground," Cole said. And the way he said "we." It was the first time she felt she wasn't alone. But trouble was already closer than either of them knew. A dark cloud formed on the horizon, not in the sky, but in the form of riders. And they were coming straight for them. What does a woman do when the path she ran from finally rides straight to her door? The riders came like a rolling storm, their horses pounding across the open land. Dust rose behind them in a long, angry cloud. Cole saw them first. He stepped away from the window, his face set in a hard, controlled line. "They're coming," he said quietly. Evelyn felt her stomach twist. She had known this moment would come. Jed Crow would never release what he believed belonged to him. She had run from him, but men like Crow didn't let go. They hunted. Cole grabbed his rifle. "Inside," he ordered. She wanted to argue, she wanted to stand beside him. But his tone left no space for it. She ran into the cabin and bolted the door, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Through a small crack between the logs, she saw Cole take his place behind the stone well. solid cover in the open yard. His broad shoulders were tight with focus, his steps sure, his rifle steady. The riders slowed as they neared the cabin. 5 of them, 4 hired guns, and Jed Crow at the front, just as she had feared. He sat tall in his saddle, a cruel smirk twisting his mouth. Crow called out, his voice slick with false righteousness. "Matthews, I'm here to collect what's mine. You've got something that belongs to me. Send her out now, and we settle this peaceful." Cole didn't answer. He lifted his rifle and fired a single shot. A chunk of wood exploded from a tree inches above Crow's head. It wasn't a miss, it was a warning. Crow's smirk vanished. "So that's how it's going to be," he snarled. His men spread out. Rifles lifted. Gunfire erupted like thunder. Bullets slammed into the cabin walls, shaking the whole structure. Evelyn dropped to the floor, hands over her head. Splinters rained down as another shot tore through the logs. She crawled to the revolver on the table, the one Cole had taught her to use. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped it. Outside, Cole returned fire with calm precision. Every shot he fired made one of Crow's men duck or fall back. He knew his land, every dip and shadow, and he used it like a shield. But they were too many. And they weren't fighting fair. One of the gunmen broke away, circling wide toward the barn. Evelyn saw him through the crack, saw the bright torch burning in his hand. "No," she whispered. He threw it onto the roof. Flames leapt instantly, orange and hungry, spreading fast across the dry pine boards. Smoke curled up into the sky. Cole saw it too. Evelyn watched the look of pain cross his face. The barn held his tools, his feed, his horse, his life's work. Crow barked a command. "Keep him busy. Burn him out." Cole hesitated just 1 second, and chaos exploded. Crow kicked his horse hard, rushing toward the cabin, while one of his men fired rapid shots to pin Cole down. Evelyn's heart stopped. Crow was coming for her. She unbolted the door just as he reached it. He kicked it wide open, knocking her backward to the floor. Before she could lift the revolver, his hand clamped over her mouth. He yanked the gun from her, throwing it across the room. "You thought you could run from me?" He hissed, breath hot and sour against her cheek. "You're mine." He dragged her outside, one arm across her throat, choking off her scream. She clawed at him, kicked, fought, but he was bigger, stronger. Cole rose from behind the well, fury blazing in his eyes. Crow tightened his grip. "Drop the rifle," he shouted, "or I break her neck." Cole froze, his rifle halfway raised, his eyes locked on hers, pain, fear, rage, all tangled together. Evelyn felt tears burning her eyes. She shook her head. She didn't want him to surrender. Not for her. She did the only thing she could do. She slammed the heel of her boot down onto Crow's foot. Crow screamed and loosened his grip. Not much, but enough. Cole took the shot he'd been waiting for. But another gunman fired too. A sharp crack split the air. Cole staggered. His hand flew to his shoulder. Blood poured between his fingers. "No!" Evelyn cried. Cole dropped to one knee, struggling to lift his rifle. Crow aimed his pistol at Cole's heart. Evelyn acted on pure, wild instinct. She threw her head back, smashing it into Crow's face. Bone crunched. Crow screamed and let go. She fell to the dirt. Cole fired. The bullet struck dead center in Jed Crow's chest. Crow staggered backward. Shock filled his eyes as he looked down at the spreading red stain. He collapsed in the dust, his boot heels twitching once, then falling still. Silence fell. A deep, awful silence. Evelyn scrambled to Cole. He was slumped against the well, blood soaking through his shirt, his face white with pain. "Cole," she whispered, grabbing his face in her hands. "Stay with me. Please." His eyes fluttered open. "You stood your ground." He breathed. She pressed her forehead to his. "We stood our ground." Neighbors arrived, drawn by the smoke and gunfire. A doctor came. The townsfolk who once whispered turned quiet and ashamed as they listened to Evelyn's truth. every word of it, spoken boldly on the porch with Cole fighting for life inside. And slowly, Dust Creek softened. They helped bury the dead, helped rebuild the barn, helped repair what hatred had broken. Cole lived. Because she would not let him die. And when he walked again, when his shoulder healed and his strength returned, he took her hand one quiet afternoon and said, "I'll marry you if you'll have me." She had no hesitation. A year later, they were far from Dust Creek, in a quiet valley near New Mexico. Their new home stood bright against the sky, a fresh start built by their own hands. The river nearby was calm and clear, nothing like the angry water that had first brought them together. One evening, Evelyn trailed her fingers through its cool surface and whispered, "This river doesn't take anyone away. It only brings people together." Quote. Cole knelt beside her and took her hand, kissing her fingers gently. Together they watched the sunset paint the sky in colors as warm as the life they now shared. They had survived storms, bullets, fire, and the cruelty of men. Now they had peace. And they had each other.